I've been thinking a lot about my dad lately. Strange thing to focus on when you're alone on the mountain, but that's where my brain goes at 3 in the morning when I'm supposed to be watching for fires. He worked construction for 41 years, never missed a day, never complained, just showed up and did the work. The morning he retired, he sat at our kitchen table for 6 hours straight, just staring at his hands. Mom asked him what was wrong. You know what he said? I don't know what to do with these now. I get it now. I'm 38 years old, sitting in a fire lookout tower in Montana, and I finally understand what he meant. My name's Emmett Lindquist. I took this job 4 months ago, right after my wife left me for her CrossFit instructor. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Trust me, living it was worse than hearing about it. 23 years together, and she leaves me for a guy named Chad who drinks protein shakes for breakfast and has a tattoo of a barbell on his calf. The Forest Service was hiring fire spotters for the season. The posting was pretty honest. 6 months alone on the mountain, basic amenities, mediocre pay, lots of time to think. That last part should have been a warning. But when your wife is posting Instagram photos with Chad doing partner workouts while you're sleeping in your truck in a Walmart parking lot, a tower in the middle of nowhere starts looking pretty good. Copper Ridge Lookout Tower is exactly what it sounds like. A box on stilts, 8,847 feet up, northwestern Montana. 14 by 14 feet of living space, bed, desk, chair, wood stove, and a glass cupola where I spend 12 hours a day looking for smoke. The toilet is an outhouse 50 feet away. The shower is a bag of sun-warmed water hanging from a tree. The nearest human being is a ranger station 28 miles down a dirt road that becomes impassable when it rains. The job is straightforward. Watch for smoke, call it in, keep the logbook, check the weather instruments, make sure the radio batteries don't die. That's it. During the day, it's actually peaceful. You see eagles hunting, watch storms roll in from Canada, count how many deer pass through the meadow below. It's the kind of quiet that gets into your bones, makes you realize how loud your old life was. Night is different, though. After the sun sets and the radio goes quiet, after the last day hikers have found their campsites, you're the only person awake for miles. That's when you start hearing things you can't quite explain. Seeing lights where there shouldn't be any, finding footprints in places no one could have walked. But I'm jumping ahead. Let me start with my first week, when I still thought this job would be boring. The ranger who drove me up to Copper Ridge was a woman named Dottie Yazzie, 60-something, Navajo, with hands that looked like they could strangle a bear. She drove her pickup truck up that dirt road like she was personally offended by every pothole. Didn't say much for the first hour, just chewed tobacco and occasionally spit into a Gatorade bottle. You married? She asked suddenly, right as we passed a rested mile marker. Was. Good. Marriage and lookout towers don't mix. Had a couple up here in '98. By July, one of them was sleeping in the outhouse just to get some space. She pulled over at a wide spot in the road and pointed through the windshield. See that ridge? The one that looks like a broken tooth. I squinted. There were about 50 ridges that could fit that description. Lightning loves that spot. 3 strikes last season. But the storm comes through. You stay inside the tower. The whole thing's grounded. Works like a Faraday cage. You'll be fine unless you're stupid enough to stand on the catwalk, waving a metal pole around. We drove another 20 minutes before she spoke again. You know about the previous spotter? Just that he left early. Dottie made a sound that might have been a laugh. Left is one way to put it. Radioed the station at 2 in the morning. Said he was done. Walked down the mountain in the dark. Left all his gear, even his wallet. Rangers found him 3 days later at a truck stop in Coeur d'Alene, buying bus tickets with money he borrowed from strangers. Why'd he leave? She shrugged. Some people can't handle the quiet. Makes them paranoid. They start thinking the trees are watching them, that kind of thing. She glanced at me. You're not the type to get paranoid, are you? I don't think so. Good. Because we need someone to finish the season. Fire danger's high this year. The tower came into view around the next bend. It looked exactly like the photos on the Forest Service website, except smaller and more precarious. The stairs zigzagged up the support posts and the whole structure had a slight lean, like it was tired of standing. Dottie helped me carry my supplies up. The previous guy really had left everything. There were still dirty dishes in the sink, a half-eaten jar of peanut butter on the counter, a book splayed open on the bed. Walden by Thoreau. I almost laughed. Of course. Radio check is every morning at 8 and every evening at 6, Dottie said, showing me the equipment. Weather report goes to the station twice a day. You see smoke, you call it in immediately. Doesn't matter what time. Questions? What about groceries? There's a resupply every 2 weeks. Make a list, radio it in, someone will drive it up. Try not to forget anything because no one's making special trips. She showed me how to work the water pump, the solar battery system, the propane tanks for the stove. Basic stuff, but the kind of details that matter when the nearest hardware store might as well be on the moon. Before she left, Dottie stood in the doorway and looked at me. Really looked at me, the way my grandmother used to when she was trying to figure out if I was lying. The guy before you, Garrett was his name. He kept talking about lights. Said he saw them moving through the trees at night. Too high to be hikers, too steady to be planes. We figured he was seeing headlights from the logging road on the other side of the valley. Happens sometimes when the atmospheric conditions are right. But that's not what you think. She spit tobacco juice into her bottle. I think 26 years of spotters have worked this tower without walking off the job in the middle of the night. Then Garrett shows up in the last 5 weeks. Now you're here. She headed down the stairs, then stopped. Keep your door locked at night. Bears, you know. The way she said it, I knew she wasn't talking about bears. The first 3 days were exactly what I expected. Boring. I woke up at sunrise, made instant coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and sat in the cupola with binoculars. I'd scan the horizon in sections, the way they taught us in the 2-hour training video. Look for smoke, not fire. Smoke shows up first. Any color counts, white, gray, black, even that brownish haze that comes off pine needles. I saw nothing, just trees and rocks and the occasional hawk. The radio was my only human contact. 8 in the morning, Dale at the ranger station would check in. Copper Ridge, this is Station 4, radio check. Station 4, Copper Ridge here, all clear. Copy back, Copper Ridge. Have a good one. That was it. 15 seconds of conversation to last 12 hours. I tried reading Garrett's copy of Walden, but gave up after 2 pages. Thoreau was full of shit. He lived 2 miles from town and his mom did his laundry. I was sitting on an actual mountain, pooping in an outhouse, and the closest thing to transcendental enlightenment I'd found was figuring out how to heat a can of ravioli without burning it. On the 4th night, I heard the whistling. I was lying in bed, not quite asleep when it started. Faint at first, just 3 notes repeated over and over. Not a bird, I'd already learned those. Not wind through the trees either. This was human whistling, the kind someone does when they're walking alone and trying to pass the time. It was coming from below the tower. I got up and looked out the window. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to see the clearing around the tower's base. Nobody there. The whistling continued, moving slowly around the perimeter, like someone was circling the tower. My first thought was hikers. Sometimes they camp nearby, even though it's technically not allowed. I grabbed a flashlight and went out on the catwalk. "Hello?" I called down. "This is Forest Service property, no camping here." The whistling stopped immediately. Not faded away, not moved off, just stopped, like someone had hit a switch. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, flashlight beams sweeping the trees. Nothing moved. Then I went back inside and locked the door. Told myself it was probably just some backpacker who got spooked when I called out. Happens all the time. The next morning I found the salt. Someone had poured a circle of salt around the entire tower, maybe 3 feet from the support posts. Not a small amount either. This was pounds of salt, the kind you'd use for de-icing a driveway. The circle was perfect. No gaps, no breaks. Must have taken bags of the stuff. I radioed Dale. Station 4. I've got a situation up here. What kind of situation? Someone poured salt around my tower, like a circle. There was a long pause. Salt? Yeah, a lot of it. Probably kids. We had some teenagers from Whitefish get caught tagging rocks last month. Same group, most likely. How would teenagers carry that much salt up here? It's 14 miles. You'd be surprised what bored kids will do. Just leave it. Rain will wash it away. But here's the thing. It hadn't rained in 2 weeks. The weather report showed no precipitation for at least another week. So whoever had done this, they'd done it recently. And they'd done it quietly. I'm a light sleeper these days, ever since Hannah started sneaking out of bed to text Chad at 2 in the morning. I would have heard someone walking around the tower for the hour it must have taken to lay that much salt. That evening, I mentioned it during the radio check. Different voice this time, a woman named Jackie. Copper Ridge, you said someone put salt around your tower? Affirmative, full circle. Another pause, then. Was it regular salt or rock salt? Weird question. No one out and looked. Regular table salt looks like. Huh. Garrett mentioned salt too. What you mean? Check his logbook. Might be in there. Station 4 out. I found Garrett's logbook in the desk drawer. His handwriting started neat but got progressively worse. The last week of entries were barely legible. But there it was. May 15th. Salt circle appeared overnight. No tracks, no explanation. May 16th. Salt still there. Whistling again last night. Closer this time. May 17th. They don't like the salt. There was no entry for May 18th. That's the night he left. I spent the next day going through everything Garrett left behind. Not just the logbook, his backpack, his clothes, even the trash he hadn't taken out. I know how that sounds, but when you're alone on the mountain and someone else has run away in the middle of the night, you want to know why. Most of it was normal stuff. Protein bars, dirty socks, a phone charger for a phone he apparently took with him. But in his backpack's inside pocket, I found a notebook. Not official Forest Service issue, just a regular spiral notebook from Dollar General. The first few pages were grocery lists, reminders to call his mom, that kind of thing. Then the entries got stranger. May 3rd. They walk on 2 legs, but their knees bend wrong. May 7th. Counted 6 of them tonight. Always 6. May 10th. They can mimic voices. Harold from Station 4 called on the radio at 2 a.m. Harold's been dead since April. May 14th. The salt was Dottie's idea. She knows more than she says. I tried calling Dottie on the radio, but she was off duty. Dale answered instead, said she'd be back tomorrow. When I asked about Harold, he got quiet. What'd you hear about Harold? Someone mentioned him. I lied. Harold had a heart attack in April. On the job, actually. Good man. Why? Just curious about the previous spotters. well, don't go digging up ghosts. That's not what you're paid for. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the cupola with every light in the tower on, watching the tree line. The binoculars were useless in the dark, but I kept them around my neck anyway. Made me feel like I was doing something. At 11 p.m., something walked out of the woods. It stood at the edge of the salt circle, just outside the reach of my lights. Tall, maybe 7 feet, but hunched over like it was uncomfortable standing upright. It had the basic shape of a person. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but everything was slightly off. The arms were too long, the torso too short. When it moved, testing the salt barrier with 1 foot, its knee bent sideways before snapping back. I grabbed the radio, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. But who was I going to call? Dale would think I'd lost it. And what would I say? There's a person here, but not really a person. The thing circled the tower 3 times, always staying outside the salt. Then it sat down, cross-legged, but with its legs folded in a way that made my stomach turn. And it waited. Just sat there, facing the tower, not moving except for its head, which tilted back and forth like it was trying to see through the windows. I turned off the lights. Stupid, maybe, but I didn't want it looking at me. In the darkness, I heard it whistle. The same 3 notes from before, over and over. Then a second one joined from the opposite side of the tower. Then a third. By midnight, I counted 6 distinct whistles, all circling the tower in different directions, creating this awful harmony that made my teeth hurt. At exactly 3 a.m., they stopped. I looked out the window. They were gone. But next morning I found footprints outside the salt circle. But here's the thing about the prints. They were human at first, near the tree line. Normal boot prints, size 11 or 12. But as they got closer to the salt, they changed. The toes got longer, the heels stretched out. By the time they reached the salt barrier, they looked more like bird tracks, if birds wore boots and weighed 200 pounds. I took photos with my phone. When I tried to send them to Dale at the ranger station, my phone said no service. I'd had 2 bars the day before. The radio still worked, barely. Static kept cutting in and out, but I got through to Dottie. "You put the salt there," I said. No point dancing around it. "The salt was there when you arrived," she answered carefully. "Bullshit. You told Garrett to put it there. What are those things?" Long pause. So long I thought the connection had died. "You ever hear of the Wendigo?" she finally asked. "The cannibal monster thing?" "That's the Hollywood version. The real ones are different. They're what happens when the mountain decides it doesn't want people around anymore." "That doesn't make sense." "A lot of things don't make sense up there. The salt helps. Keeps them curious but not aggressive. Without it..." She trailed off. "Without it what?" "Ask Garrett." "Oh wait, you can't." "So I'm just supposed to sit here every night while these things circle my tower?" "You're supposed to watch for fires. That's the job. The other stuff, it's just the price of admission. Tower's been there since 1953. You think you're the first person to see them? Then why doesn't anyone talk about it?" She laughed, but there wasn't a happy sound. "Would you have taken the job if we put 'must coexist with territorial mountain spirits' in the posting?" "This is insane." "Yeah, well, sanity's relative when you're alone on the mountain. Keep the salt fresh. Don't look them in the eye. Don't answer if they call your name. And whatever you do, don't let them know you're afraid." "How do I not let them know I'm afraid when I'm terrified?" "Fake it. Sing songs, talk to yourself, play music. They're like animals. They can smell fear, but they can also be confused by confidence. Guy in 89 played the harmonica every night. Terrible player, but it worked. They left him alone. And if they don't leave me alone? Static filled the channel. When it cleared, Dottie was gone. I tried calling back for an hour, but either the radio was fried or nobody was answering. I took Dottie's advice about the music, found an old FM radio in the supply closet, the kind with the antenna you have to position just right to get anything but static. When we picked up one station clearly, some oldies channel out of Kalispell that played the same 100 songs on loop, but it was noise, and that's what I needed. For 3 nights it worked. I crank up the radio around sunset, sing along badly to Hotel California and Brown Eyed Girl, and the things would keep their distance. They still came, always 6 of them, but they stayed back in the trees, watching. I could see their eyes reflecting the tower lights like deer on the highway. On the 4th night, the radio died. Not broken, not static. The station just went off the air mid-song. 1 second, Credence was warning about a bad moon rising. The next, nothing. I checked the batteries, fiddled with the antenna, tried other stations. Dead air across the whole spectrum. That's only started talking. It began with my name. Emmett. Just that. Whispered from 6 different spots around the tower. Not called or shouted. Whispered. Like they were sharing a secret. I grabbed a pot and a wooden spoon from the kitchen and started banging them together. Childish, but it was loud. The whispers stopped. When I quit banging after my arm got tired, they didn't start again. Small victory. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the tower stairs. Not the things. These were normal, human footsteps. Boots on metal, steady and unhurried. They climbed about halfway up, then stopped. In it? It's Dale, from the station. Radio's down, so I drove up to check on you. Dale's voice. Perfect imitation. Except Dale was a 70-year-old man with bad knees who complained about walking to his mailbox. No way he'd driven up here in the middle of the night. The door's locked, buddy. Can you let me in? It's cold out here. I stayed quiet. I know you're awake. I can see you moving around in there. The footsteps climbed higher, 3/4 of the way up now. Emmett, don't make me use the master key. There was no master key. Garrett's notebook had mentioned that specifically. Forest Service doesn't keep duplicates because they'd have to helicopter them in if someone lost the original. Nice try. The footsteps reached the top platform. The doorknob rattled. Open the door, Emmett. The voice was still Dale's, but there was something underneath it now. Like 2 people talking in unison, 1 half-second behind the other. We just want to talk. About the salt. About the rules. About what happens next. The doorknob turned. I'd locked it, but it turned anyway. Slowly. Like the lock was made of clay instead of metal. The door opened an inch before catching on the chain. I'd installed that chain my 2nd day thinking about bears. Thank God for bears. Through the gap, I saw fingers. Too many joints. Each finger had too many joints, bending in places fingers shouldn't bend. They reached through, feeling along the chain, testing its strength. I grabbed the first thing I could reach, Garrett's copy of Walden, and slammed it against the fingers. They pulled back, and something made a sound like a cat being strangled. The door shut. Footsteps went back down the stairs, faster this time, taking them 3 at a time. I looked out the window. All 6 of them were standing at the salt line now, not trying to hide. In the moonlight, I could see them clearly. They wore clothes, hiking gear, Forest Service uniforms, regular civilian stuff, but the clothes fit wrong. like they dressed in the dark using someone else's wardrobe. One wore a ranger hat that sat on top of its head like a party favor because its skull was the wrong shape. The one in front, wearing Dale's uniform. Where did it get Dale's uniform? Pointed at the salt circle. Then it stepped over it. Nothing happened. No burning, no recoiling, no magic barrier. I just stepped over the salt and kept walking toward the tower. "The salt doesn't work anymore," it said in Dale's voice. "We learned." All 6 of them crossed the salt and surrounded the tower's base. Then they started climbing the support beams. Not the stairs, the actual metal beams. Climbing like spiders, using those wrong jointed fingers to grip rivets and seams I couldn't even see. I did the only thing I could think of. I got on the radio and started transmitting on the emergency frequency. Full power, wide band, hoping someone, anyone would hear. "Mayday, mayday, this is Copper Ridge Lookout Tower. Emergency assistance needed immediately. 6 intruders attempting to breach the structure. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not..." The radio exploded. Not caught fire, not sparked. Exploded like someone had put a firecracker inside it. Pieces of plastic and wires scattered across the cupola. A shard caught my cheek, drew blood. The climbing sound stopped. I looked out. They were all pressed against the windows now, faces flat against the glass, studying me. Their eyes were human-shaped, but the wrong color. Not the iris, everything. The whites were gray. The pupils were horizontal slits like a goat's. One of them tapped on the glass, polite, like knocking on a neighbor's door. When I didn't respond, it tapped harder. The glass cracked. I retreated to the center of the room, as far from all windows as possible. The tapping spread to all sides. Tap, 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 crack. Tap, 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 crack. Spiderweb fractures spread across every pane. Then, silence. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, waiting. Nothing happened. Finally, I risked to look outside. They were sitting in a circle around the tower, cross-legged, heads tilted back, mouths open, waiting for something. The mouths kept opening wider, impossibly wide, like snakes unhinging their jaws. A sound came from those mouths, not whistling this time, singing. 6 voices, harmonizing, but the words weren't in any language I recognized. The melody was beautiful and wrong, like a lullaby played in reverse. My nose started bleeding, then my ears. The harmony was doing something to the air pressure, to my internal organs. I could feel my heartbeat skipping, trying to match their rhythm. I grabbed the emergency flare gun from the supply kit. 3 flares. That's all I had. I fired one straight up through the cupola hatch. Red light exploded overhead, illuminating the entire mountaintop. The singing stopped. The things scattered back to the tree line so fast I barely saw them move. And in the distance, coming up the access road, I saw headlights. Real headlights, bouncing and weaving on the rough trail. 15 minutes later, Dottie's truck pulled into the clearing. She got out carrying a shotgun and the bag of something that looked heavier than it should be. She surveyed the cracked windows, the scattered salt, the blood on my face. "Yeah," she said. "You're done here." "What?" "Get your stuff. You're leaving." "But the job." "The job doesn't matter if you're dead. They marked you. See the cracks in the windows? That's them saying you're not welcome anymore." "So I just run away like Garrett?" "Garrett's alive. That's more than we can say for the spotter in 74. Or the one in 2003. She threw the heavy bag at the base of the stairs. More salt, but this was different. Darker. "This'll hold them for tonight. Maybe tomorrow. After that, all bets are off." I started packing. Didn't take long. I hadn't really unpacked to begin with. As I stuffed clothes into my duffel bag, I asked, "What are they?" "Old," Dottie said. "Older than the Forest Service. Older than Montana being a state. They were here first. We're the invaders." "Then why put a tower here?" "Because fires don't care about territorial disputes, and most of the time they leave us alone. Most spotters never see them. But sometimes, someone shows up that they don't like. Something about their smell or their voice or, hell, maybe they just don't like their face. When that happens, we evacuate." "Will they follow me?" She shook her head. "They're tied to this place. Leave the mountain and you're free." We didn't make it to the truck. Halfway down the stairs, Dottie stopped so suddenly I nearly ran into her. She held up her hand, listening. At first I heard nothing. Then from the access road, the sound of an engine dying. Her truck's engine. "Did you turn it off?" I asked. "No." We stood frozen on those stairs for maybe 30 seconds. Then Dottie turned around and pushed me back up. "Inside. Now." We barricaded ourselves in the tower. Dottie shoved the desk against the door while I stuffed towels under the gaps in the windows. She pulled a handful of something from her pocket. Dried plants, looked like sage and something else, and started burning it in a coffee mug. "That's not going to work," I said. "They already crossed the salt. This isn't for them." She pulled out her cell phone, trying to make a call. No signal. She tried the satellite phone from her pack. Dead. "They're learning too fast," she muttered. 20 years ago, they couldn't even mimic voices properly. Now they're killing car engines? A knock at the door. 3 polite raps. "Dottie?" "Emmett? It's Jackie from the station. Dale sent me up when you didn't check in." Dottie snorted. Jackie weighs 90 pounds and is scared of driving in the dark. Try again. The voice outside laughed. Not Jackie's laugh, something else trying to approximate human amusement. "Worth a shot," it said, dropping the pretense. The voice now was neither male nor female, just wrong. "We have a proposition." "We don't negotiate with..." Dottie started. "With what?" "Monsters? Spirits? We're older than your words for us. We were here when your ancestors were still learning to make fire." "What do you want?" I asked. Dottie grabbed my arm, but I shook her off. We were trapped. Might as well hear them out. "The tower," it said. "We want the tower removed. Permanently." "That's not our call," Dottie said. "We don't have that authority." "Then get someone who does." "The Forest Service isn't going to abandon a fire lookout because..." 71 years, the voice interrupted. "That's how long this tower has been here. 71 years of watching. Always watching. Do you know what it's like to be observed? Studied. Your land mapped and measured and marked." I looked at Dottie. The bothered by being watched? She shrugged, but I could see her working through the same thought. The voice continued. "Every summer, someone sits up here and watches. Makes notes, reports, files paperwork about our home. We tolerated it when it was just about fires. But now you have cameras, satellites, drones. The watching never stops. So you're what? Privacy advocates?" I couldn't help myself. Silence. Then, in 1952, before the tower, a man came here with a team. They surveyed every inch of this mountain, took samples, drilled core samples from our gathering places. A year later, the tower went up. Dottie's face changed. The uranium surveys. The what? I asked. In the 50s, the government surveyed for uranium all over Montana, Cold War stuff. They were looking for deposits to mine for weapons. They found more than uranium, the voice said. They found us. And they put this tower here not to watch for fires, but to watch us, to make sure we stayed put, stayed quiet. That's ridiculous, Dottie said, but she didn't sound convinced. Check the basement of the ranger station. The lock filing cabinets from 1953, the ones nobody has keys for anymore. Even if that's true, we can't just tear down the tower. Then we'll tear it down ourselves, with you in it. The smell of smoke drifted through the towels I'd stuffed in the window gaps. Not wood smoke, something chemical, like burning plastic. They set fire to something, I said. Dottie went to the window. The outhouse. They torched the outhouse. That won't spread to the tower, I said. It's 50 feet away. No, but the propane tanks are only 20 feet from the outhouse. We both looked at the two large propane cylinders that powered our stove and heater, sitting on the platform just outside. How long before the heat reaches them? I asked. Depends on the wind. As if on cue, a gust shook the tower. Toward us. We need to move those tanks, I said. You want to go outside with them? You want to explode? Dottie grabbed her shotgun. Fine. But we do it fast. I'll cover, you drag the tanks to the other side of the platform. She yanked the door open and we rushed out. The 6 things stood in the line between us and the stairs, blocking our escape route but not advancing. The outhouse was fully engulfed, flames reaching 15 feet high. The heat was already uncomfortable. I grabbed the first propane tank and started dragging it. The thing was heavier than expected, and the metal was already warm. As I pulled it across the platform, one of the creatures took a step forward. Dottie fired her shotgun into the air. Rock salt rounds, I could tell by the spray pattern. The creature stepped back but didn't flee. "Hurry up," she shouted. I got the first tank to the far side and went back for the second. This one was hotter, almost too hot to touch. I used my jacket as a grip and hauled it away from the fireside. That's when I saw what was really happening. The creatures weren't trying to stop us. They were hurting us. While we focused on the propane tanks, 3 of them had circled around to the other side of the platform. We were surrounded. "Dottie, I see them." "Last chance," the lead creature said. It had given up trying to look human now. Its face kept shifting, features sliding around like they were painted on water. "Leave the tower. Walk away. Tell your people this place is done." "I can't do that," Dottie said. "Then we take you both. Add you to our collection." "Collection?" I asked. It smiled, its mouth spreading too wide. "Where do you think we get the clothes?" "The voices. Every spotter who didn't leave when we asked. They're still here. Part of us now." That's when I understood. These things weren't wearing Dale's uniform or using Jackie's voice as imitation. They had absorbed them somehow. Dale, Jackie, Harold, all the people Garrett had written about. They were all gone, consumed by these creatures. "You're lying," Dottie said, but her voice shook. The creature wearing Dale's uniform reached up and pulled at its face. The skin came away like rubber, revealing another face underneath. Harold's face. The spotter who'd supposedly died of a heart attack. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, eyes pleading. "Still alive and here," the creature said. "Still aware. Still watching. Always watching. Just like they wanted." Dottie made a sound I'd never heard a human make before. Pure rage and grief mixed together. She raised the shotgun. "Don't," I said. "Harold's still in there." "No," she said. "Harold's gone. That's just his echo." She fired. Rock salt scattered across the creature's chest. It stumbled back, and for a second, Harold's face showed clearly, mouthing the word "thank you." Then the whole thing collapsed into something like wet clay and scattered into the darkness. The other 5 creatures shrieked in unison, a sound that made my vision blur. They rushed us from all sides. "Jump," Dottie said. "What?" "Jump off the platform. It's our only chance." "That's 30 feet. She grabbed my hand. "Trust me." We ran to the edge and jumped. The fall lasted maybe 2 seconds, long enough to think this was stupid and I should have called Hannah back, and I never returned that library book from 1998. We hit the slope hard, but at an angle, which saved us from breaking every bone in our bodies. Instead, we rolled and tumbled and bounced off rocks and trees for what felt like forever. When we finally stopped, I was face down in pine needles, pretty sure my shoulder was dislocated and I could taste blood. Emmett. Dottie was 10 feet above me, wrapped around the tree trunk like she was hugging it. Her shotgun was gone. Her right leg was bent in a way that made me nauseous. "Can you walk?" I asked. "Does it look like I can walk?" I crawled up to her, every movement sending fire through my shoulder. Her leg was definitely broken, bone pushing against the skin, but not quite through. "We need to set this," I said. "We need to run. They're coming." She was right. I could hear them up above, moving through the tower, probably looking for another way down. We had maybe 5 minutes before they figured out how to track us. "I can't carry you with this shoulder." "Then pop it back in." "I don't know how." "Ram it against that tree, hard as you can." I did. The pain was so intense I actually lost vision for a second, but I felt the joint slide back into place. The relief was immediate, even though it still hurt like hell. I helped Dottie stand, taking most of her weight on my good side. We started working our way down the mountain. No path, no flashlight, just moonlight filtering through the canopy and the sound of our ragged breathing. "There's an old mine shaft," Dottie said through gritted teeth. "Quarter-mile down. Boarded up, but the boards are rotten." "Why would we trap ourselves in a mine?" "Because they won't follow us in." "How do you know?" "Because that's where we found the bones." Before I could ask what bones, we heard whistling behind us. Close. Too close. We moved faster, Dottie hopping on one leg, me basically dragging her. My shoulders screamed with every step. The slope was steep enough that we were almost falling forward, using trees to control our descent. The mine entrance was exactly where Dottie said it would be. A black mouth in the hillside, partially hidden by deadfall and decades of forest growth. The boards covering it were so rotten they came apart in my hands. "You sure about this?" I asked. Behind us, something laughed. "Not far now." We squeezed through the opening. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly. The tunnel was narrow, maybe 4 feet wide, and sloped down into absolute darkness. We felt our way along the walls, rough stone and occasional support beams that felt like they might collapse if you looked at them wrong. 30 feet in, The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling. The mountain above was riddled with fissures. Just enough light to see by. The bones were everywhere. Not scattered or thrown around. Arranged. Carefully positioned in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Some were obviously animal. Deer, elk, smaller things I couldn't identify. But others were human. Skulls lined up along one wall. Femurs crossed in precise angles. Finger bones arranged in spirals that seemed to move when you weren't looking straight at them. "This is their place," Dottie whispered. "Their original home, before the mining companies blasted it open in the 1890s. Before we violated it. So, we're in their lair." "No. We're in their church. And they won't desecrate it by following us here." She was right. The whistling stopped at the mine entrance. We could hear them out there, pacing, occasionally testing the opening. But they wouldn't come in. "How long will they wait?" "Until sunrise, probably. They don't like daylight. Not because it hurts them, just they find it undignified, I think." We found a relatively bone-free spot and sat down. Dottie's leg needed attention, but we had nothing to splint it with except bone, and that felt like a bad idea. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "My grandfather worked the original survey team in 1952. He's the one who found them. Or, they found him. He tried to warn the government. Told them these mountains were occupied by something that shouldn't be disturbed. And I guess they didn't listen. They listened. That's the problem. They heard, something inhuman lives here, and thought, perfect place to hide nuclear research. The tower was never really about fires. It was about monitoring them, making sure they stayed contained. And the Forest Service knows? The old-timers do. The ones who've been around long enough to see the pattern. Every few years we lose someone. Heart attack, they say. Or they quit suddenly, move away. But we know. So why keep the tower? Because the alternative is admitting we've been lying for 70 years. Admitting we've been sacrificing people to keep these things contained. You think the government wants that conversation? Outside, one of the creatures started speaking. Not to us, to the bones. It was apologizing. In that strange harmony voice, it was apologizing to the bones for what it had become, for taking human voices, human shapes, for violating its own nature in order to fight back. They were probably beautiful once, Dottie said. Before we came. Before we forced them to adapt to our presence. I thought about the creature wearing Harold's face, the moment of gratitude before it dissolved. Harold knew, didn't he? About what they really were. Harold figured it out his last season. Started leaving them offerings. Food, tobacco, little things. They'd left him alone for months. Then corporate sent up new equipment. Cameras, motion sensors. Harold refused to install them, so they sent Dale to do it. And Dale? Dale installed everything. Harold had a heart attack that night, officially. But Dale said he found Harold sitting at his desk looking out the window. No marks on him, but stone dead. And outside, 6 sets of footprints in the snow, walking away. We waited until dawn, listening to them move around outside. Sometimes they'd whisper to each other in that language I couldn't understand. Sometimes they'd be silent for so long I'd think they'd left. Then one would sigh or shift its weight, and we'd know they were still there. Dottie's leg was getting worse. The skin around the break had turned purple-black, and she'd stopped responding to questions about the pain. just stared at the bone patterns on the walls, maybe seeing something I couldn't. "We need to get you to a hospital," I said. "They'll never let me leave. Not after I killed one of them." It wasn't really one of them. It was Harold, or what was left of him. She laughed, bitter and short. "You think that matters to them?" I destroyed something they'd absorbed. That's like, imagine if someone killed your memory of your father. Not your father, just your ability to remember him. That's not the same thing, isn't it? The collective beings. Every person they absorb becomes part of their memory, their identity, and I just erased part of that. The first ray of sunlight hit the mine entrance. The creatures made a sound together. All 6, 5 now of them, like they were saying goodbye. Then silence. I helped Dottie up. Her leg couldn't take any weight now, and she was burning with fever. We made it to the entrance, and I peered out. Nothing. Just trees and morning mist. "They're gone?" "Until tonight," she said. Dottie's truck was still in the clearing by the tower, but when I tried it, the engine was dead. Not just dead, the battery had been removed, all the spark plugs were missing, and something had filled the gas tank with pine needles. The tower itself was untouched except for the broken windows. I could see movement inside, though. Papers flying around in a wind that shouldn't exist in an enclosed space. "I need to go up there," I said. "Are you insane?" "The emergency radio in the supply closet. It runs on batteries. If they didn't destroy it, I can call for help." "And if they're waiting? And daylight? You said they don't come out in daylight." "I said they find it undignified. It's not the same as can't." But I was already heading up the stairs. The door was still barricaded from the inside, which made no sense until I pushed it open and saw what they'd done. Every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, was covered in writing. Not in ink or pencil, scratched directly into the wood and metal, like something with very sharp fingers had spent hours carving. The same phrase over and over, in English and other languages I recognized and some I didn't. "You are the invasion." The emergency radio was smashed, of course, but the satellite phone Dottie had brought was still in her pack, and when I tried it, I got a signal. Weak, but there. I called the ranger station. A woman answered, not Jackie. "This is Copper Ridge Tower. We need immediate medical evacuation. Ranger Dottie Yazzie has a compound leg fracture." "Copper Ridge? You're supposed to be evacuated. Who is this?" "Emmett Lindquist. Responder. Listen, Dottie's hurt bad. We need... Put Dottie on." I went back down and handed Dottie the phone. She talked for maybe 30 seconds, then handed it back. "Helicopter's coming," she said. 90 minutes. "What did you tell them?" "Bear attack. We surprised a grizzly near the tower and knocked us down the slope. Simple, believable, no paperwork beyond the standard forms." "They'll see the writing. The broken windows. Vandals. Happens sometimes when towers are empty." We waited in the clearing, Dottie propped against a tree, me watching the forest line. Nothing moved except normal things. Squirrels, birds, wind in the branches. "You could stay," Dottie said suddenly. "What?" "Not here. But with the Forest Service. I could get you assigned to another tower, one without... complications. After this... Most towers are just towers. Boring. Peaceful. What you were looking for in the first place." I thought about it. Thought about Hannah and Chad. About my empty apartment in Bozeman. About starting over somewhere else. Then I thought about Harold's face. Grateful and terrified at the same time. About the creatures apologizing to their bones. "What happens to this place?" I asked. "Someone else will come. Someone who doesn't know. And maybe they'll last the season. Or maybe they'll run. Or maybe they'll become part of the collection." Yeah. The helicopter appeared over the eastern ridge, the sound of its rotors echoing off the mountains. As it circled for a landing spot, I made a decision. I want to see those files, the ones from 1953. Dottie studied me. Why? Because someone needs to know the truth. The real truth, not the official story. Someone needs to document what's actually happening here. That's dangerous thinking. More dangerous than sending innocent people up here. The helicopter landed, kicking up dust and pine needles. 2 paramedics jumped out with a stretcher. As they loaded Dottie, she grabbed my hand. "The files are in cabinet 7. The key is hidden in the coffee can, labeled decaf in the break room. Nobody drinks decaf." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're right. Someone needs to know. And you've seen them now. You can't unsee them. That makes you responsible." "For what?" She squeezed my hand harder. "For deciding what happens next." I found the files 3 weeks later. Cabinet 7 was in the basement of the ranger station, behind a water heater that hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. The coffee can labeled decaf had 17 keys in it. Only one looked old enough to be from 1953. The files were yellowed, typewritten on a manual typewriter that had a broken E key. Every E was slightly higher than the other letters. The first folder was labeled Initial Survey, Copper Ridge, 1952. Standard stuff at first. Geological reports, timber assessments, mineral rights documentation. Then I found the personnel file. Survey Team Alpha, 4 members. Dr. Eugene Watts, lead geologist. Marcus Reeves, surveyor. Jennifer Pike, biologist. Carl Lindquist, equipment, operator. I stared at that last name for a long time. Lindquist isn't common, but it's not rare either. Could be coincidence. The next file was thicker. Encounter reports, classified. Carl Lindquist had written most of them. His handwriting was shaky, like he was scared or cold, or both. May 15th, 1952. Made contact with indigenous entities, non-human but intelligent. They showed us the mine, their sanctuary. Tried to communicate through pictures drawn in dirt. They wanted us to leave. May 20th, 1952. Entities demonstrated ability to mimic our voices. Dr. Watts wants to capture one for study. I've advised against this. May 23rd, 1952. They took Jennifer last night. Found her this morning. Alive, but changed. She speaks in harmonies now. Won't stop drawing spirals. May 24th, 1952. Jennifer walked into the woods at dawn. Didn't try to stop her. The entities returned her voice but kept everything else. She doesn't remember who she is. The last entry was different. Typed, not handwritten. Official. June 1st, 1952. Survey team member Carl Lindquist deceased following equipment malfunction. Body not recovered. Team recommends permanent monitoring station be established at Copper Ridge to study anomalous entities. Research potential for biological weapons application pending further review. But there was one more paper, stuck to the back of the folder. A handwritten note, dated June 2nd, 1952. They gave me a choice. Join them. I watched them take my son when he grew up. One from each generation, they said. payment for the intrusion. I chose my boy. I chose David. Tell him his father loved him. Tell him I did what I had to do. Carl David. My father's name. I sat in that basement for hours, piecing it together. My grandfather hadn't died in an equipment malfunction. He'd made a deal. Joined them willingly to save his son. To save my father. My dad worked construction for 41 years. Never went camping, never hiked, never went anywhere near the mountains. Now I knew why. He knew what was waiting there. What had taken his father. The morning he retired, sitting at our kitchen table staring at his hands, he wasn't wondering what to do with them. He was wondering if the deal had expired. If it was finally his turn. Or mine. I drove back to Copper Ridge that night. Not to the tower. I parked at the trailhead and hiked to the old mine. They were waiting outside. All 6 of them, though one was new, smaller, wearing a Forest Service uniform that looked familiar. "Garrett?" I called out. The small one stepped forward. When it spoke, it was Garrett's voice, mixed with something older. "You volunteered. Like your grandfather, to save his daughter from eventually coming here." "The deal," I said. "One from each generation." "What one who chooses?" "Your grandfather chose. Garrett chose. Now you're here." "What if I don't choose?" "Then your children will come. Or their children. The mountain always collects its debt." I thought about kids I didn't have yet. I never have. Thought about my grandfather, disappearing into these woods to save my father. Thought about my dad, carrying that weight his whole life. "If I join you," I said, "it ends. No more Lindquists. It ends." I looked at the mine entrance, at the bones arranged in their ancient patterns. Looked at the creatures that had once been human, maybe still were in some way. Do I keep my memories? Everything. That's the curse. You remember everything while becoming something else. I took out my phone and typed a message to Dottie. The files were enlightening. "Tell them the tower needs to come down. Tell them it's over." Then I walked forward. The transformation doesn't hurt. That's what Garrett whispers to me now from inside our shared consciousness. It's just like falling asleep in one body and waking up in another. You still dream about being human. You still remember coffee and warmth and the weight of loneliness. But now you also know the language of bones, the songs the mountain sings, the old agreements written in stone and starlight. We don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to be left alone, to exist as we always have, between the human world and something older. The tower still stands, but it's empty now. Sometimes hikers find it, take pictures, wonder why it was abandoned. They don't stay long. We make sure of that. Nothing harmful, just a feeling that they should leave. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. Because somewhere out there, reading this, might be another descendant of those survey teams. Another inheritor of old debts. Check your family history. Ask about the relatives who disappeared into forests, who took jobs in remote places and never came back. We're waiting for you. We've always been waiting. But you can choose like I did, like my grandfather did. The mountain always offers a choice.